our time, feel free to just drop it in there. And I'm gonna wait maybe a couple more seconds, just in case there's somebody who's in the process of logging in. Did you all have a good day today?
I had a busy day. I don't know what you call it good. I put corn in the freezer. It took me 6 hours to do it. I ended up with 14 quarts. But you have to silk it and silk it and silk it and then wash it and silk it some more. And then you blanch it. And then you put it in ice water, and then you put it in the refrigerator for 15 minutes, and then you cut it off, and then you put it in the bag. So I got a big blister on my face.
And this is corn?
This is corn.
I'm not doing it right.
Corn on the cob. That's how you do it. I take it off the cob because when I freeze it on the cob, it doesn't do well.
Gotcha.
But it's a lot of steps to it.
Yeah, I have never.
And I started at 7 o'clock this morning and I finished at 12 noon.
Wow. Well,
but that's a blessing. It's a blessing. I'll have fresh corn in the wintertime, fresh corn straight out of the garden in the winter. So that's good.
It is. That's impressive.
You didn't pay 67 cents an ear at Trader Joe's.
I know, isn't that something?
Yeah.
I know, that's right. And I cook with a lot of corn too. I put corn in a lot of my dishes that I fix. So, and tomatoes. I canned tomatoes last week. I put 14 pints of tomatoes.
Wow. Is it even time? Like, I would have thought, this is the season to can?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you harvest it, you can it right away.
Okay. I'm learning.
I put some okra in the freezer too last week.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know
we'll have okra, corn, and tomatoes.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and just invite us to get started today. We're discussing Ruth, who I just, I love Ruth for so many different reasons. For me, it's probably one of the most powerful love stories in the Bible. And then as one who was always so frustrated with the unnamed, the many unnamed women in the Bible, it means a lot that not only was Ruth named, but she's the only woman who was given a book, an entire book named after her. And so all of that is really important to me, and it is very meaningful. So I'm glad we get to have this conversation today. I kind of just want to jump out there with some questions. I think most of us are familiar with the story of Ruth, and it's usually told through the context of Naomi, who was her mother-in-law. And we understand that Ruth and Naomi, Ruth was married to one of Naomi's sons, and her sons tragically died. And so Naomi is left with these two daughter-in-laws, and she basically tells them, all is lost. Just go back home. I don't have anything for you. Like, literally, she's like, my sons are gone. In essence, I know that's the connection that we had, right? I had sons that you were able to marry, and I no longer have that. So just go find a life the best way you can. And both of them at first were like, no. You know how we do. No, I could never leave. But then Naomi persisted, and the other daughter-in-law said, okay, all right, I love you, but you're right. Let me go figure out what I'm going to do with myself. But Ruth, Ruth said, no, I'm not going to leave you. And her words are so beautiful. I don't know why I don't have it right here. But you're all familiar with it. Many people use this in their wedding vows and their wedding ceremonies. And I'm not saying it correctly, but I think you all are familiar with the passage. She says something to the effect of, wherever you go, I'll go. Wherever you lodge, I'll lodge. Your people be my people. Your God will be my God. That's kind of a rough version of it. It was basically a declaration of loyalty, and love. Like, I don't care. I don't care if you don't have anything to offer me. I'm not leaving you. And that's very powerful. I think the only parallel I can draw in scripture to someone leaving everything like to that magnitude is Abraham. However, I was reading earlier today that Abraham did all that because he had a definitive call from God. God said, Abraham, leave your people. I'm going to take you to a land. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to do this. Ruth didn't have that. This was all just Ruth, and Ruth making this choice. Does anyone have any thoughts or just even reflections as to why? Obviously we can't talk to her right now, but why? Thank you for putting that in the chat. I'm going to read it because it's so beautiful. She says, do not press me to leave you, to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people should be my people and your God, my God. She took it a step further. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do thus to me and more as well, even if death parts me from you. Powerful words. But why?
Can we say it was God's plan? She probably did, like Naomi. Probably they had a connection. Sometimes with your mother-in-law, some daughter-in-laws have a connection and others don't. And I had a connection with my mother-in-law better than some of her daughters did. So, it could have been she felt that connection there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's a good point on both sides because, sometimes you mention the word mother-in-law and people start breaking out into a sweat, depending on the kind of relationship. But also I was reading somewhere, hospital workers were saying that many times it's the daughters, but sometimes it's the daughter-in-laws who are there caring for people in their, at the end of life. So yes. Did you have something?
Oh, I was going to say maybe she didn't have an alternative. We don't know much about her, do we?
No.
Her life before.
We know she was a Moabitess.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's a valid point. She knew what she was going back to. Maybe she felt that being with Naomi and their relationship was worth more than whatever lied back there for her.
Hadn't the two daughters-in-law made a decision because they married sons of a different religion and so forth? And so they had made, I would assume that they had made a decision that's in that time, the women generally followed the man's, whatever he said goes. And so they had already made that decision. And then they died. Why would they not go with Naomi?
Right, just as a way of following through, seeing the plan through, even if it changed significantly. Those are some good thoughts. You mentioned just leaving everything. Ruth, in essence, left her family. She abandoned her national identity and renounced her religious affiliation when she makes this declaration to go back with Ruth. That's a lot. That's a lot of sacrifice for anybody. And while, like, as you mentioned, it made sense to do that in marriage, in the context of following the man who was, ruling over her. But now Ruth is making the decision to apply these same metrics, the same loyalty, the same level of sacrifice to this woman, this older woman. I think that's an interesting, I don't know, just something interesting to note, because it was highly uncommon. Who pledges allegiance to an older woman in scripture? And not only allegiance, but like I said, she gave up everything. This may be a kind of a personal question, but we're here. Have you ever made these kinds of sacrifices for someone? Has there ever been a point in your life where you were willing, either you did or you would have been willing to leave your family, to abandon your national identity, or even renounce your religious affiliation? I know we love being AME, but is somebody out there worth it? Or was somebody out there worth that kind of sacrifice? I'm hearing crickets outside my window.
Well, I will speak because I left my country and I went to a foreign country. I didn't give up my religion, but I had to change faiths, that is, denominations. So that's a pretty big change. Not too many people give up their country when they're, in their early 20s. So I did that. I did that for my husband.
What country did you leave?
I left this country.
Mm.
I was living in New York, and my husband got a job in Canada.
Mm.
And at the time, the Canadian dollar was worth more than the US dollar. So one gets, capitalists give other capitalists the advice, go where the money is, So
Right.
that's where we went.
And how did that feel for you? Like, how? And like, so you don't have to share anything you don't want to share, but was it easy? Was it?
Well, I had already moved around a lot with my family. And so I was kind of used to moving. And so in some ways, it was just another challenge. That's the way I took it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't take it as a hardship. Mm-hmm. I took it as something else to do, like, years of school, college degrees, all these things you have to do that, or you're asked to do, or you're expected to do. So I just said, okay, I'll do this. So
Mhm.
I think I had the right attitude, and so that helped. And I wasn't alone either.
Yeah.
So and I looked for connections
Mhm.
to facilitate things. And so I didn't sit around and mope. I worked. I looked for a job. That was the first thing probably the first thing I did, and I found a job. So all of those things fell into place.
Mhm.
And then I learned about another culture. And so and I took that as a plus, because I like that kind of thing. But when you live in Canada, you're so bombarded by the bigness of the United States that you get local news, but you also get the national news from the States. So
Mhm.
you're not that far. I mean, that's
Right.
a big country, and you have a distance to go anywhere you want to go. It's whether you're going back to the States or whether you're going someplace else in Canada. You have a lot of distance. But that's also that represents a certain amount of freedom too,
True.
So I didn't feel, I think people here thought that I was way far away and cut off and all that, but I didn't feel that way. I
Mm.
just took it. I took it in stride. I tried to take it in stride because I thought that was the way it was supposed to do. And I got along okay. I was very well treated there. And it was a new experience, and I like new experiences. So
Okay. I'll take it.
okay.
That's I think hearing real life experience and life stories kind of help. Even though we can't talk to Ruth, we can talk to each other, and kind of just fill in some of the human dimensions of what this looks like, you know. Does anybody else have anything you want to share, like a time where you left either your family, your country, your religion, or
Can
you
I
can
give you an opposite story?
sure. You didn't leave.
Well, I spent the early part of my life in the Air Force,
Mm.
and I was raised AME. My wife was raised Baptist, and when we were in the United States, we generally attended AME churches, and our two sons and a daughter were brought up in the AME faith. And fast forward to when I retired here, my wife said, I'm tired of being a camp follower, and I'm going to go back to my Baptist roots. And so she did. And I was part-time in AME and part-time with her. Some people thought I was going to be was going to change. And I was until they told me I had to be baptized again. And I said, no, I've been baptized and I'm not going down that route anymore. But at any rate, she made the sacrifice. And then she went back to her roots.
Mm-hmm.
That's the opposite story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's similar, but yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think it says a lot, that she moved, that she switched, for so long. And then it says a lot that, I was waiting on the conflict when you said she went back to the Baptist church.
Right.
I thought you were going to say, you fought. Those are grounds for separation for some folks. So I think it's admirable that you all were able to make those kinds of sacrifices and, in your relationship. Anybody else? It can be that you did, you didn't, you thought about it.
I don't know whether you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
I think it's very important to note that, and this is really in the text, that we find here a Moabite woman who sacrifices to be with her husband, Yahweh, God, because of a calling, because of a purpose. But yes, she does favor and follow Naomi, but it's very clear that she's serving as an example, a human example of her love and fidelity to God and the one, and that relationship involving those whom God has called her to be with. And this person here is Naomi. But it serves an example of real life. When God calls us out of and into whatever God deems appropriate for his purpose, it involves sacrifice. It involves loyalty, fidelity, and love that is all-encompassing. And it's not generated by events or circumstances that man controls, but that God has already conceived and that man makes choices within. And that's different. That's different. It's a different walk. It's a different feeling of love. And it's a commitment that never ends because it's controlled by God's purpose and witness. And it's real, it's authentic, but it's not generated by emotion or man's desire or will or acknowledgement or need for praise or need. It's rooted in a love that is unexplainable and is rooted in a commitment that is in perpetuity entwined with another. And so I believe that this story aligns with what God does and chooses to do with, and God is the one doing it too. So that's another variable. God is choosing whom God chooses for God's purpose. And what's so amazing about this is that it has so many winding roads. The love deepens as the challenges deepen.
Yes.
It's just amazing that you're allowing a few people just to speak. Your wisdom is allowing you to give meat and flavor to how God moves in mysterious ways. But yet he uses human destiny and human lives and decisions to bear witness to who he is. And so when I read, and I have read the words, and I see and know what I do see and know, even though it's something that's mysterious, but yet so real. This is what I know, that when God moves, and when God does the choosing, when God steps in and makes God's self known through relationship, deemed for his purpose, it is for his glory. And this is an example. And so this is just an example, a human example of God's faithfulness to his people and how God's people are faithful to each other in his relationship and in his working. I just want to share that because it's just amazing because it's all by faith, but it's all according to God's purpose. And it's so it's a miracle. And but this is how God works, and we are faithful. I just want to share that. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I love that. There's so much in what you said. For some reason, when you were saying all that, my mind went back to the other daughter-in-law. And it's you were saying mystery and using words like miracle in the decision, right? So it's I think even the existence of this other daughter-in-law makes that distinction even more clear that
Mhm.
no, it's perfectly normal for someone to say, okay, I'm going to go a different way. And there's no judgment there. I don't, I've never felt or heard anyone preach hard against Orpah because she left. What she did made sense. And it made sense for her. However, we don't hear anything else about her.
Mhm.
And that's again, there's no judgment. I hope she lived a great life. However, Ruth, as a result of her decision, for whatever mysterious reason, while I don't, we don't read anywhere that she gets a direct call from God, it is clear that her purpose and her destiny was wrapped up in these decisions that she made, in this particular decision that she made to stay. And it's powerful. I believe, and this is obviously it's just us reflecting, when I look at Ruth and Naomi, I believe, yes, it was God, because God is love, you know. But I also believe there was, and I said, someone said it earlier, there was a connection there, a God ordained connection that could not be broken. Just even when Naomi tried, she literally tried, and Ruth refused. So yeah, I think it is powerful and it's beautiful to know that this kind of thing exists. This kind of boundary breaking, rule breaking, system breaking, mysterious, miraculous love and connection, loyalty, fidelity exists. And I also think it's powerful that it wasn't a romantic male-female relationship. I think that sometimes we get in our minds and we're socialized to think that is the relationship that dominates everything. And this part of the beauty of this is that, love, well, this sounds very trite and cliche, but love is love. That when we understand God to be love, then there is no ordering or structuring or hierarchical way to look at it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but does anyone else have just a thought or reflection on any of this?
I was going to say about Ruth being an older woman, and I know back in those days, if you're a widow and old, you're just, you're on your own. And I think maybe Ruth might have considered, looking after Naomi. It's two women together, an older woman and a younger woman, and neither one had any property or anything. They were both just two poor women, but she still felt the need to go with her, sort of like a protector. I still feel like that with that connection there. And of course, we know, the plan that God had for her. She didn't know it. But I think that was a significant point, because an old widow didn't have much place in the world back in those days.
Right. Right. And that's, and we've been talking a lot just over the span of these few months about the nature of God and who God uses and how God consistently chooses these unlikely folks and these unlikely situations. Why couldn't God just bless Ruth in the confines of this rich marriage that she had scored a rich man? That sounds like the pathway to blessing to me. She did it. She made it. She landed herself a good man with good money. Like that's kind of how we're socialized to think of social mobility, blessing, favor, but here we're looking at someone's destiny being shaped through their decision to stick by a destitute old woman. It's kind of strange, but I think the more we study the nature of God, the more it makes sense. And the more important it is, page 87 in Holy Imagination, it's just a very powerful paragraph there at the end that kind of speaks a lot. It speaks loudly to just some of the stuff we're dealing with today. And I'm just going to read it because her words are pretty well scripted. She says, Israelite readers who encounter this story must make a decision. Is the commandment in Leviticus and Deuteronomy to take care of widows, orphans, and strangers in Leviticus and Deuteronomy more important than the commandment in Deuteronomy to exclude the people of Moab? Is Ruth's faithfulness to Yahweh more important than her Moabite heritage? This comedy reflects the people's struggle, then and now, to determine whether God is a God of scarcity or abundance, exclusion or inclusion. And there's a lot in there, but just to break it down into little pieces, I would like to kind of discuss the fact that, Ruth is a Moabite. She's from Moab. And as an Israelite, Israelites are commanded to take care of widows, orphans, and strangers. And Ruth is all of those things. But in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, they're also commanded to exclude folks who don't worship the way that they worship. They're literally commanded not to intermarry, not to intermingle and have relationships with strange women. So, the author is kind of raising this question. If you are an Israelite reading this, how do you prioritize which commandment to keep? You're on mute.
I'm interested in your conversation. I usually go to noonday.
Okay.
And you're a chapter ahead of where we are.
No.
Where we were today. But
okay.
But it's okay. But what I think when you talk about the different versions of how people in the Bible itself, you have the J, the E, the P, and the D presentations, and so it really would depend on who wrote this, and maybe they weren't into Deuteronomy is it's not coming from that point of view where you have to do things a particular way, and if not, then something else is going to go. And if you look at it as literature, and it's more, to me, a story of faithfulness and just trusting God that everything is going to be all right. And I've had that journey. When I first moved down into this area with my husband, we were definitely stepping out on faith coming down here, and never thought I would continue to live down here.
Really?
No, no.
Where were you going?
Well, we were I'm from New York.
Okay. Okay.
And although he was not born there, he was a New Yorker too.
Mhm.
And we came down here because he was going to school. And we had just got married, and I thought once he finished school, we probably
You gonna go on back.
to New York, and my life and all my friends up there. And
Mhm.
he had family down here. I did not.
Mhm.
But God will lead you where it is that you need to be. And we ended up down here. I got along with his family, most of them very well. And but pretty much was, out there, gotta get a job, gotta make all these things happen. And towards eventually my sisters moved down here.
Oh,
Because I was down here, and
okay.
my sister was really in the need of had a lot of health challenges, and that was good that she was down here where I was. And then my other sister came, and that was good with them helping with my children, and
Mhm.
help with my sister's child. So life makes different turns for you. Didn't start off as an AME, started off as Episcopalian.
Well, you got the E.
Yeah, but I had to get out of there. And we went to Metropolitan. We started searching, for a church, and went to Metropolitan, and that was it. You're back.
Yeah.
So God will lead you. He'll take you where you need to be, and you'll be in places, you'll experience things that you think you never would ever participate in. Your life becomes a little different than what you thought it might be, and in some ways better.
I mean, that's the consistent thing I'm hearing,
Yeah.
from you all who have shared. It's like, and Ruth, I hear Ruth speaking too, that it doesn't have to be, yes, it's a sacrifice, but at the end of the day, it's a blessing. Even when it doesn't make sense to other people, even when it looks crazy, it's not practical, it's not in line with anything that anybody would advise. Like I said, I can't get over the fact that Naomi herself said go. I don't know. I have some rejection stuff I'm still working through, and I don't. If somebody tells me to go, it's gonna take me a minute to work through that. But Ruth didn't care.
Wasn't she telling her that though, to look out for her?
Yes.
I mean, it was really an unselfish go.
I said it was an issue. I have a rejection issue. It's my issue. I don't care if you're saying it lovingly. All I see is you telling you pushing me away. But yes, clearly Ruth could see through that and said no. no, I'm gonna go. Um, I'm gonna go with you. And I want to get more into, some of this language as far as even her being a stranger. So Naomi going to Bethlehem is one thing, because that's where she's from. It's she's going home. But Naomi's going as a foreigner, as a stranger into this place. She's not immediately leveling up in the sense that, some of us leave, we're pursuing opportunities of that nature, but she's coming into a new place where, I mean, truth be told, the people are warned about her, warned against her, warned against people like her. So that creates kind of a different dynamic. And I think even the people of that time have to struggle with who she is versus who she becomes versus who she's always been meant to be. They get there and she's literally fighting for scraps to eat. She's gleaning in the field. She's picking up leftovers because that's what the strangers are supposed to do. She couldn't go and get a good job. She couldn't just go apply to be the assistant to somebody. She had to get a line and no, this is your place in our society. You get this bag and you go over and pick up what we leave behind. And she did that. But I think it's kind of an interesting conversation to process the treatment. She's a widow who's supposed to be taken care of, but also she's a Moabite woman that's supposed to be, she's a foreigner that's supposed to be treated like that. And I kind of see some parallels in our society with just a lot of the, I don't want to call it hypocrisy, I'll just say incongruencies with how we treat people. And a lot of it is religious based. It's based in religion, in religious conflicts of interest. We can delve into pro-life, pro-choice stuff. Like everything in our country, I feel like is being polarized. And at the root of all of it is somebody's interpretation, somebody's ideology, from a religious standpoint. And you can justify either, but it's problematic. It becomes very problematic. So for some, the Bible says, if a man doesn't work, he doesn't eat. You can find a conglomeration of scriptures that support working hard. You can find scriptures that support slavery. Like you can definitely do that. But then there's also, all the plethora of scripture that we know that support taking care of your neighbor, loving your neighbor. If you see somebody without a coat, give them yours. So how do you all feel about those kinds of dynamics with Ruth, but even with our societal context, where the commandments almost seem to clash regarding certain people?
Well, are the commandments just for us?
Say more.
There are things that we're supposed to do. Are we the only ones that are supposed to do that? Are we the only ones that we're supposed to do it for? In
When
terms
you
of
say we, who do you mean, Linda?
Christians.
Oh.
That's a good question.
What was the what? I don't know. What is the Moabite culture?
You know, let me look really quickly at what.
Well, you know, this country is supposed to be the melting pot. People come
They
from all over, come from all, supposed to, I said supposed to.
Right.
People
Aren't they
came from
descendants
all
of
over.
Cain?
Huh?
I say, aren't the Moabites descendants of Cain?
Descendants of Cain?
Oh,
I don't recall.
there's a lot of contradictions, and we've been over this, you know,
Yeah.
ever since they got out of Egypt, you know, finding this land and killing all the people and taking it. But on the other hand, the contradiction says be kind to strangers. So how do you, I don't know how you reconcile that. You know,
Right.
and this is
But they
God
didn't kill
talking. This
everybody.
is God
They didn't
talking.
kill everybody they were supposed to kill. That's why these other people survived.
But you're also supposed to be kind to strangers.
Yeah.
Right.
And a
And
stranger is defined as somebody that's not like you
right.
or your religion, I guess.
Right.
Well,
I-
that's, well, who is a stranger really? How do we define who a stranger is? Not because they don't look like us or act like us. What is a stranger?
Someone you don't know. That
And
might
now
be your
y'all
next
sound
door.
like
It
Jesus.
might be your neighbor next door.
I was just gonna say you sound like Jesus. Who is my neighbor?
Who is my
Mhm.
neighbor? You know, next door. So that's it's like that. And I understand where everybody's coming from about the book of Ruth. And I like the book of Ruth, but yeah. In today's world, that's what is happening. We got a lot of strangers here. We do.
We really
All of my white cousins came up in here, okay? I'm gonna call it that way. That they don't even know me. You know. And you know, and
So they're strangers to you.
yeah, they are until you get to know them, until you introduce yourself to them and find out where they came from. Then you kind of get a little bond there, you know. But like I said, like this is what I do every day when I go outside and walk, you know, go to the store and stuff. I speak to everybody. I say hello, you know, because that's what I was brought up to do, speak. I don't care how many times you speak to them. You might speak to them 5 times a day, you know, you see the same person. But you know, today you don't see that anymore.
right.
You don't see that at all no more. You just walk past each other and then and it's not only that in the it's everywhere. It's in your job place where
Yeah.
you work at, you know, where you go to church. Sometimes, you know, even though you be in church and even though you don't even know that person, they might be new. You know, I go out for me, I go up there, introduce myself and say, who are you? You know, because I don't know, you know. You coming into my church, you know, and wherever else, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's important. Like, I think that's another very important piece to this, to Ruth, and why Ruth is included here, because at the end of this thing, Ruth is tied up in the lineage of Jesus. You know, it's like this foreigner, this seemingly random woman from this strange place. And I didn't even start. I started looking at Moab and all of that, but it's a lot. We would have to do a whole genealogy on who conquered them and at what point. And for the purposes of this conversation, they were strangers to Israel. You know, they were outsiders.
Mhm.
So I did look it up. And
Oh,
so
good.
it is important, but yeah, so we just need to, because it's kind of unbelievable here. And so the Moabites actually come from the Israelites. And so they
It's
belong to
funny
the
you say
same
that.
ethnic, the Moabites belong to the same ethnic stock as the Israelites.
Isn't that
And
something?
the ancestral founder was Moab, a son of Lot, who was the nephew of the Israelite patriarch Abraham.
There you go.
And what happened was that it says this God protector of the nation was Chemosh, and just as Yahweh was the God protector for the Israelites. So we're looking at family here. We're looking at
That's
we're
profound.
looking at relations. Isn't this amazing? And so the Moab people shared ancestry with the people of Israel, but they were polytheistic, and they worshiped a god called Chemosh. And so we're talking about family, ethnic
Mhm.
background, people,
Yeah.
people who
And
worship
what I
one
was,
another, but still relatives. And so that's why, if we look in our text here, it says again on page 87 that then fidelity to Yahweh determines one's family and clan. Back to this same concept. This
Mhm.
love and faithfulness to Yahweh determines one's family and clan. Because God, and so many did not probably understand or remember the relationship, and so she sent it out because they worship Chemosh versus Yahweh, but relatives.
It's
And
so
so
powerful.
isn't this amazing? This is really something. It's true, and it's true.
And
Many
it's
people who were
powerful.
Christians worship different gods.
It's powerful because the thought, I was going to share this in the context of even just the foolishness that we deal with when we were talking about who is our neighbor and the concept of stranger. I did an ancestry test, and I'm like, this is a hot mess. Like,
It
this is
really is. It really is.
a
It
hot.
really.
I
It's
am
getting better and
Scottish.
better.
Right. Look, I'm Scottish. I need to be out here celebrating St. Patrick's Day.
Oh,
4%. And there were so many. There was the United Kingdom. There was Wales. There was,
my.
just all this stuff.
Yeah.
Think about how interconnected we all are. It sounds cliche. Oh, we are the world. We're all siblings. But we really are.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I feel like God is constantly trying to draw our attention, to that. And maybe the best way to do that is by consistently pulling the other into the narrative so that we can get a clue that they aren't other. They belong right where they are. I think somebody said it earlier. No, Ruth was going where she belonged.
Mhm.
That was her destiny, to be right there with the Israelites, worshiping Yahweh.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing that, just that insight along.
That is
Okay.
interesting. Even and if she really was of the same people, you still have different ways. So
Yeah.
like Rosemary said, Rose said, you speak to everybody. That was one of the really weirdest things about me moving to this area.
From New York.
From New York.
Right.
And it's not that the people in New York are not friendly. If you ask
No.
them something, they will help you in a heartbeat. But they tell you what it is that you need to know, make sure you're straight, and then you go on your way. But you don't walk down the streets just saying hi to people. And that was like very strange to me when I moved down here. Like, why are all these people saying hello to me? And I would say hello back, but I was thinking, what is this all about? So but in the end now, I understand it. And you kind of move the way you need to move to get along where you're at. But
Absolutely.
it's good that she stayed with her mother-in-law and wanted to take care of her.
Yeah. And I'm glad that she stayed. It's like it's another message of, it just breaks down so many barriers for me. It's like, stay with whomever you feel that divine pull to stay with.
Can I say this?
Yes.
Is history repeating itself? As we look back, I was picking it back what Reverend Shan Strong was saying, and I looked it up too. And it's history repeating itself, because that's what I'm thinking. Back then, they supposed to have been together. So if you're a Moab or Israelites, they said part of the Israelites, you mean to tell me you don't honor the Moabs? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Understand, honor your Moabs, and then here we are today, just like you said, your history. I'm doing an ancestry too, and understanding, and it's funny. I'm serious. It's really funny and understanding. And I see how Ruth is about her, was it Ruth or Naomi? Naomi, I think it was Ruth that lost her husband, was it Naomi? Well, both of them did.
Everybody. Yeah, everybody lost their
right.
husband.
And Ruth wanted to go back to her homeland, whatever, which was fine and okay. But to me, history is repeating itself as we look at the Bible and look at what's happening today. Oh man, I got a good little understanding. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. I was at a concert, and they were wearing t-shirts saying everybody is an alien somewhere. And I don't like the word alien, but I like the concept that, if you, whoever you are, you can go somewhere and be a stranger, in quotation marks. None of us owns the earth in that way. But I think that I don't know, I keep coming back to the nature of God and God's, how desperately God wants to include people, to the point where God includes Ruth in the lineage of Jesus, which I think is so powerful, so important, so beautiful, such a message for us, the people that we try to, put down, push away, push back, find differences. Many times we're the same people. And I feel like the work of God and our work, is to constantly bring that to the forefront, to bring that to the surface, to bring our similarities, to bring our what the language that she used, something dealing with even just our being family, connected by God, to the forefront, as opposed to focusing always on who needs to be excluded and by what criteria they should be excluded.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's 8:01. I apologize for keeping you all 60 seconds past time. But I really appreciate you all, really appreciate the conversation. And I just enjoyed the space. I hope you all have a good night. I pray for just peace in your homes, peace in your bodies, peace in your relationships, peace as you rest and slumber tonight, and ask that God will protect you, protect your family, and protect everything that pertains to you, and that you will never feel like a stranger. In Jesus' name, amen. Good night.